afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast Addendum with me, your host, Imperial Dane, Master of Propaganda. Today's topic is we're going to talk about the Brits in, Pretend Companies 3, because particularly we're going to end up in Italy. That's likely going to be Brits again. And I think it's time we talked about how Relic sort of just keeps falling into the same pattern with the British Army, which is somehow they have bulletproof infantry and somehow they have these really annoying mortar emplacements. It starts like they're sort of trying to create this feeling of a slow, ponderous, methodical army structured with manpower, yet I'm not entirely sure how that translates into bulletproof infantry with a lot of Bren guns and mortar emplacements. In particular, the mortar emplacements strike me a bit booted. Again, the British were an offensive army, they were the attacking army, they weren't the defending army, so in that sense, all those emplacements, even like they're sort of slow and more ponderous, don't particularly make an awful lot of sense. Nor does, again, the bulletproof infantry. Really, I cannot emphasize enough. They need to stop with the British bulletproof infantry. It turned out to be a terrible idea in Companies 1. It turned out to be a terrible idea in Companies 2. It's going to be a terrible idea if they try it again in Companies 3. Just drop it, Relic. Similarly with the mortar emplacement. It was a terrible idea in Companies 1. It was a terrible idea in Companies 2. By Jove, if they're going to try it again, it's going to be a terrible idea again, because the mortar emplacement just on its own is a terrible idea, just like how basic bulletproof infantry is a god-awful idea. And I really sincerely hope they will now have learned the lesson, because, again, I will reiterate, don't go there, Relic. Don't, for the love of all that is good and fun, do British bulletproof infantry and British mortar emplacements. Like, if you want to do a slow, ponderous army, there are a lot of other ways to do it, but again, they do not involve basic bulletproof infantry, and they do not involve mortar emplacements. They are god-awful ideas. Again, if you want to do the sort of slow, ponderous army, slowly advancing, securing all that, there are a lot of ways to do it. You can maybe force them to have to do more upgrades than any army, slowly unlocking everything they got. That could be a way of doing a slower, more ponderous army. Slowing it down, in a tide of tech, bureaucracy and all that. That could be an idea. Maybe force them to build sort of special buildings. Maybe they have to build dumps for artillery and fuel dumps, whatnot, which can then be harassed by their opponents. That could also sort of force a more defensive state at times, because they can have to worry about opponents harassing these dumps. These dumps, of course, will then unlock additional abilities or improve abilities. For example, your artillery might suddenly have a bit more impact with some of these things, rather than just let's just give them mortar emplacements and bulletproof infantry sections. Again, terrible idea. Similarly, universal carriers probably also should be avoided, at least in their current forms. They should probably be a bit later, but then again have more utility. Or at least they should not be bulletproof in the early game when the opponent has no real way of seriously countering them. They can on the hand hurt the enemy infantry really well. That was a bad idea in Companies 1, and it's unsurprisingly turning out to be not an amazing idea in Companies 2 either. Again, they keep sort of repeating these same mistakes with the Brits while they're sort of trying out a lot of things, and some of those things are working out, but some of them just keep not working out, and they really need to stop with that, to be honest. Similarly, if you're only going to give other armies stuff, you need 4 tiers. You just need to give the British army at least as many tiers, then, because again, if they're supposed to be the slow, defensive, late game army, they need to have some of the most tiers in the game. Again, lots of upgrades instead of again in Companies 1 they had 3 trucks, 3 tiers for most of the armies. At least had more tiers than that. Or at least for the Panzer Elite again, which is the aggressive faction, more or less had the same number. But actually had to do more to get to the Panthers, their late game armor. And here they got essentially, 1, 2 tiers, maybe 3, but even that's tier 0. And again, even other factions got more. So again, there's these sort of weird things that sort of keep cropping up with the design girls when they come to the Brits. They'll say one thing and the design just pulls in a very, very different direction repeatedly. So similarly again, if the Brits have added, if they're going to have tiers, again, if the game's going to have tiers, be done in a different way, they need to have as many tiers as, whatever other faction is really damn slow, because having it, again, supposedly late, slow, ponderous army with some of the fastest tech in their game makes absolutely not one spit of sense as well. And again, was also one of the things that again sort of kind of makes the Brits a bit, tiresome to deal with. And again, unsurprisingly, didn't work in Companies 1 to make, more fun, and doesn't work in Companies 2 because, again, they end up somehow being an infinitely better Wehrmacht in Companies 2, in part because, again, they can hit the late game a lot faster, a lot cheaper. So, again, there's these sort of things that just somehow keep reappearing through Companies 1 and Companies 2 when we're talking about the Brits. And it's generally the things that end up being incredibly frustrating to deal with. It's not, the fun parts, it's not the interesting part, it's the really annoying parts that somehow manage to think, you know what people really loved in Companies 1? Mortar placements and Brit blobs. They absolutely love them. Just look at the forums, how they're just telling people to go, drown in a ditch or something about this. That's clearly love for the British playstyle. And I don't know. I'm not entirely sure how they can sort of keep, thinking this is an amazing idea. But furthermore, again, I want to reiterate, just in case someone watches this from early and just goes, hang on, maybe we should just do it all again in Companies 3. Like, no, don't, please, for the love of, again, all of good and fun, don't. The parts that sort of work is maybe stuff like the tank command, seeing sort of small upgrades there, here and there. Double brain guns, by the way, bad idea in Companies 1, bad idea in Companies 2, particularly on bulletproof infantry. Just want to reiterate that one. But sort of the other bits that somehow end up being slightly fun, but at the same time, it's sort of the annoying part, I suppose, and kind of makes up their identity. But if really bloody annoying is their identity, that's not really a good identity to have, now is it? Because, if you take away the sort of really annoying bits, they're basically just, a less flavoured Wehrmacht in some ways, you suppose you can consider it, which, of course, is a bit of a problem, but it does also highlight how I think they need to look at other ways of doing the British Army. And again, just accept that some parts maybe just have to be a bit more similar to the Wehrmacht, they have to be pushed in a slightly different direction, but again, just stop doing them, as one of the most absolutely frustrating and tiresome thing to deal with in the game repeatedly. Again, also trenches, like the trenches were an absolute god-awful mess in Companies 1, and the trenches for ages until they decided to unlock them, in a sense. Well, they're also, really annoying god-awful messes in Companies 2. And again, that's sort of those patterns that keep creeping up. Again, they got this idea the Brits need to be this super defensive army, but again, they're the attackers. At no point where, on a serious attack, in that sense, again, they were the ones attacking into Germany, so, something has to give there. Even, they want to be a defensive, there needs to be, I think, supposed more of a slower army, but still, they need to be an attacking army. They very much need to be that. So I think there has to be some, concessions, making just overall larger squads initially, but again, more upgrades for them. Bren guns, grenades, smoke, whatever is needed, but again, they have to be overall a bit slower about it. They are not, blitzkrieg types. And again, in that sense, maybe just having sort of various kits for the infantry sections, assault kits, fire support kits, anti-tank kits, more sort of that style. You sort of have to sort of piece it all together like a puzzle more slowly. Tanks, of course, again, could have more upgrades unlocked to them, instead of just having access to smoke and phosphorus and grenades, sort of slowly just pile on, thusly sort of slowly building up their force and state. That way it sort of becomes a more offensively oriented army. You can sort of more piece together what you feel like you need, but at the same time you're just not getting the entire kit right out of the box, which again sort of makes it slow, gives that sense of a build up, which I think the British in Companies 1 and Companies 2 rather lack, because again there's sort of this defensive army, but the somehow still ends up working amazingly as an offensive army, because they can just soak up all of the damage while dishing up tons of it without really having to put much effort into it. So those are sort of the things I probably look into, but again, primarily no more bulletproof infantry sections with axes of double brens. Stop it, Relic, please. Same with mortar placements, silly trenches, and all the other, really daft things. They really need to think this a bit harder. And again, remember, keep in mind, always, the British are an offensive army. Even the slower, more methodical, they are still an offensive army. So stop it. So that's sort of my, video on it. Just, again, something that's sort of been wanting to get off my chest for a bit here again, because, the British army designs throughout Companies 1, Companies 2 tend to be sort of one of those more confused and slightly, wait, what are they trying to achieve here? I'd like to see them maybe, stop doing it and actually, design a more fun British army that's actually fun to play against, rather than what we sort of keep getting, which is one that is just frustrating to play against time and time again and again. That's not really something I want them to remember it for. That's not something that should be, you know, the primary point to bring up, which is the Brits aren't very fun to play against. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something from it. Hope you agree with it. If you did, you know, subscribe, like, share, comment on it. Of course, feel free to point out your own sort of thoughts on how to improve the Brits for future Company 3, how you'd like to see it done and all that. This is Imperial Dane saying cheers. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you all for another video another time. Cheers.